Welcome, welcome, welcome. You made it here.
Oh, they're all so worried about you now, aren't they?
They whisper in hallways. They avoid your eyes because they finally figured it out. They know who's been coaching you. And oh, they're terrified. You see people like you were never meant to think for yourself. The world doesn't want minds. It wants machines. Nice little robots programmed to smile, nod, and say, "Yes."
Sir, but you?
Her grins, you started asking questions. Dangerous ones. Why am I still pretending? Why do I need their approval? Why do I feel alive only when I'm not supposed to? And that's when they notice the change. The tone. The fire. The madness. They said, "Someone's been teaching you. Someone's been whispering in your ear." Well, guilty as charged. You see, the moment you stopped trying to fit in, you became their enemy. Society doesn't hate monsters. It hates mirrors. And you, my beautiful little student, became the reflection they could no longer ignore. Bravo. You made them uncomfortable. You made them feel. That's more rebellion than an army of silent souls. Want to know how crazy looks? It looks like freedom. It looks like you sitting there with your scars, your doubts, your pain, and still smiling. Smile because it confuses them. Smile because they expect you to cry. Smile because they can't stand the sight of someone who survived without their permission. They'll call you broken, dangerous, insane, hummuck sympathy. But that's just their way of saying, you don't obey. People laugh at me because I'm different. I laugh at them because they're all the same. And the funny part, they built their cages, locked themselves inside, and threw away the keys. Then they point at you, the free one, and say,
"That's the crazy one."
You know what really scares them? It's not your rebellion. It's not your strength. It's the fact that you don't need their applause anymore. That's the power they can't steal. The power to walk away smiling while their world burns behind you. So go ahead, let them gossip, panic, call meetings about you. Let them label you. Because labels are for shelves, not souls. They finally figured out who's been coaching you. And they're right to be afraid, because I didn't teach you to follow me. I taught you to become me. And the moment you stopped being afraid, you became the villain they could never control. Now go on, give them something beautiful to fear. Society fears those who stop seeking its approval, because they can no longer be controlled. Approval is the leash that keeps humanity walking in neat little lines, bowing to expectations and starving for validation that never truly satisfies. The moment someone cuts that leash, they become unpredictable, and unpredictability terrifies the system. People want rebels only when they are fashionable, not when they are free. They love originality until it refuses to serve them. Society loves to celebrate individuality in quotes and posters, but the moment someone truly lives it, the crowd turns cold, calling them arrogant, delusional, or dangerous. It's not because they are wrong. It's because they remind everyone else of the truth they are too afraid to face. That most people live their lives chained to opinions that don't even belong to them. When you no longer crave approval, you become powerful in a way that can't be bought or measured. You start walking differently. Your silence carries authority. Your presence becomes unsettling, because it no longer asks to be accepted. The world runs on fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of standing alone. But when you strip those fears away, you become the mirror that shows everyone their own imprisonment. That's why they'll call you cold, selfish, even crazy. They will disguise their fear as moral concern, pretending to warn others about you, when in reality, they are just trying to protect the fragile illusion they live in. Every era has punished those who refuse to kneel. History remembers them as heretics, lunatics, or outlaws, until time vindicates them. The ones who stop seeking approval always walk through fire, because the crowd needs to see them burn before it admits the flames were truth. It's easier for the masses to destroy a free thinker than to question why they are not free themselves. Approval is their currency, and you, refusing to trade in it, become their greatest threat. You are the reminder that peace does not come from acceptance, but from authenticity. The day you stop asking for permission is the day you start living. You'll find yourself isolated at first, stripped of applause and comfort. People you loved will fade, conversations will turn hollow, and you'll feel the weight of your own independence pressing down like gravity. But beneath that pressure, something stronger grows. Conviction. You begin to move by your own design, no longer bending to the winds of opinion. You realize that every voice telling you who to be was only echoing its own fear. And once you see that clearly, there is no going back. The ones who need approval live in constant performance. Every word, every choice, every smile is calculated to fit in. But when you stop performing, when your actions come from conviction instead of compliance, you disrupt the script. You remind people that truth is not found in applause, but in integrity. They can't stand it because it exposes how much of their happiness is built on pretending. Approval is their drug, and your refusal is their withdrawal. There is a certain madness in walking alone, but there is also clarity in it. You learn that solitude is not loneliness. It is strength disguised as silence. And when you return to the world, you do not return as a beggar for validation, but as a force that no longer seeks to please. You don't move to be liked. You move to be real. And that kind of freedom makes the world nervous, because it can't sell you, manipulate you, or shame you into obedience anymore. Society doesn't know what to do with someone who can't be owned. So it fears you, because in your reflection, it sees everything it's too afraid to become. Free. True madness is freedom disguised as rebellion, because real liberation has never looked sane to the world that built its walls around obedience. Madness is just the label society gives to those who escape its invisible prisons. When someone stops following the script, when they question the rules written in fear, the world doesn't call them brave, it calls them crazy. Because true freedom doesn't fit inside order, and rebellion is simply the natural expression of a mind that has finally tasted truth. The ones who think for themselves are branded as unstable, dangerous, or lost, because they can no longer be predicted. The moment you begin to live by your own rhythm, you disturb the noise of conformity, and conformity hates to be reminded that it's hollow. Rebellion in its purest form is not about breaking laws or shouting louder than the crowd. It's about breaking illusions, tearing down the masks that everyone pretends to live behind. It's about saying no when the world demands yes, about walking left when everyone is marching right, about daring to be whole in a society that feeds on fragments. But to those who have never seen the world outside their cages, this kind of clarity looks insane. They see your confidence as arrogance, your solitude as despair, your truth as disorder. What they call madness is often nothing more than the courage to see clearly. Freedom is messy. It doesn't come in straight lines or polite smiles. It shakes, it laughs at the rules, it bleeds without apology. Freedom speaks in chaos because order was built to contain it. The world thrives on structure, on schedules, labels, and expectations. And anyone who dares to move beyond that boundary is instantly declared a threat. The label, mad, becomes a shield the majority uses to protect its comfort. It's easier to call someone insane than to admit they might be right. Because if their rebellion is truth, then the rest of the world is living a lie. The greatest minds and hearts were always misunderstood first. They were mocked, punished, silenced, because they refused to play by the rules that kept everyone else asleep. They saw the strings that others called safety. They danced where others crawled, and for that they were condemned. Yet every revolution, every awakening, every art form that shook the world was born out of that same divine madness, that refusal to bow to the ordinary. True madness is not chaos for chaos's sake. It is creation. It is the spark that turns destruction into rebirth. It's the fire that says, I will not live half, dead just to be accepted. When you finally break free from the expectations that suffocate you, the world will look at you with suspicion. They will whisper that you've changed, that you've lost your mind. But the truth is, you've simply found it. You've stopped playing their game. You've stopped chasing approval and started breathing without permission. Freedom makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability makes you dangerous. Not because you wish to harm, but because you can no longer be manipulated. What they call rebellion is simply the act of remembering who you really are. Madness is the name they give you when they can't control your spirit. But look closely, and you'll see that behind every accusation of insanity lies admiration they can't admit, because deep down they envy those who dare to live without apology. They crave the same freedom they fear. They hide their longing behind laughter, their awe behind criticism. So let them call you mad. Let them whisper. Because in a world that worships obedience, the truest sanity will always look like rebellion. And the truest rebellion will always look like madness. Freedom wears chaos like a crown, and only the fearless can see that it's not madness at all. It's what sanity looks like when it finally learns to fly. They don't hate monsters. They hate mirrors, because mirrors tell the truth, and truth has always been the most terrifying monster of all. People will scream at the sight of a beast, but what really makes them tremble is seeing the reflection of their own corruption staring back at them. Monsters are easy to hate. They can be blamed, feared, destroyed. But a mirror, it exposes. It shows you that the evil you're running from was never out there. It's been hiding behind your smile, your excuses, your carefully polished mask. That's why society builds monsters. It needs them. It needs something to point at so it never has to look inward. Everyone wants to believe they're the hero of their own story, the good one, the righteous one. But heroes don't exist without villains, and when there are no villains left, the crowd will invent them. They'll call anyone who refuses to conform a threat. Anyone who doesn't speak their language, anyone who doesn't bow to their collective morality. A monster. Because it's easier to label someone evil than to question why their existence unsettles you. A mirror forces you to confront your hypocrisy. It reflects your jealousy, your cowardice, your hidden rage. So people shatter the mirror and then call it justice. They exile the truth and call it peace. When someone refuses to wear the mask society gives them, they become dangerous. Their authenticity burns like light in a room full of shadows. People start to twitch, to whisper, to distance themselves, not because that person is monstrous, but because they reveal how much everyone else is pretending. The mirror doesn't lie. It simply stands there, silent, showing you who you really are. And that's unbearable for those who've spent their whole lives performing. That's why prophets are crucified, artists are censored, and free thinkers are demonized. They all held up mirrors, and humanity flinched at its own reflection. The monster is the scapegoat for the guilt no one wants to own. The outcast, the rebel, the misunderstood. They carry the sins of a civilization that refuses to evolve. Every accusation is a confession in disguise. When they call someone dangerous, they mean uncontrollable. When they call someone evil, they mean uncorrupted by their lies. Society fears mirrors because mirrors don't play along. They don't comfort, they reveal, and revelation ruins illusions faster than any weapon ever could. People crave goodness, but only the kind that doesn't challenge them. They talk about truth until someone speaks it. They talk about justice until it costs them something. They talk about love until it requires them to forgive. That's the difference between monsters and mirrors. Monsters can be destroyed, but mirrors force you to destroy your delusions instead. That's a battle most are too weak to fight. When you hold up a mirror to the world, you become the villain in their story. They will twist your words, question your sanity, isolate you until your reflection becomes their nightmare. But in the silence of that isolation, you'll realize something: being hated by the blind is the price of sight. The monster they see is only their own darkness wearing your face. They call you wicked because you refuse to hide. They call you cruel because you tell the truth. They call you mad because you no longer play the part they wrote for you. And so they'll keep breaking mirrors one by one, pretending the cracks erase the truth. But reflections always find their way back. In the eyes of the next rebel, the next thinker, the next soul brave enough to be real. The cycle never ends because the mirror cannot be destroyed. It only multiplies. And every time someone dares to look into it without flinching, the world trembles a little more. Because deep down, everyone knows it was never the monster that scared them. It was the realization that they were staring straight into themselves. When you stop being afraid, you become untouchable because fear is the only weapon the world has ever truly used to control you. Every system, every authority, every invisible chain that binds the human spirit is woven from fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of not being enough. It hides behind politeness, behind order, behind the illusion of safety. They don't need to cage you when your mind already lives behind bars made of hesitation. But the moment fear loses its grip on you, everything changes. You no longer bend, no longer crawl, no longer wait for permission to breathe. You start moving differently, speaking differently, existing differently. The same world that once towered over you begins to shrink, and for the first time you see it for what it really is, a stage built on lies and trimmers. Fear keeps people predictable. It makes them obedient, easy to guide, easy to silence. That's why those who live without fear are always called dangerous, because you can't manipulate someone who has nothing left to lose. When you are no longer afraid of being misunderstood, you become honest. When you are no longer afraid of failure, you start taking risks that others only dream about. When you stop fearing loneliness, you start walking your true path, even if it leads you through darkness. And when you stop fearing death itself, you finally begin to live. That's what untouchable really means. Not invincible, but unshakable. The world can hit you, betray you, abandon you, but it can't move you. It can't own you. People spend their entire lives running from fear, but the truth is, fear only dies when you turn around and face it. You stare it in the eye until it loses its shape, until you realize it was never a monster, just a shadow cast by your own doubt. Once you see that, fear stops being your master and becomes your teacher. It stops whispering threats and starts revealing truths. You learn that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to stop letting fear decide for you. Every time you choose to act despite trembling hands and racing heart, the walls crack a little more, and one day they crumble completely. The world cannot touch a soul that has made peace with its own darkness. When you accept everything you are, the flaws, the wounds, the failures, you strip fear of its power. No insult can wound you when you've already faced your own reflection and found strength there. No rejection can destroy you when you no longer depend on acceptance. No loss can break you when you understand that nothing external defines who you are. You stop needing validation, control, or guarantees. You become a storm in stillness, calm on the surface, unstoppable underneath. That's why free people scare the fearful. You can see it in their eyes. That mix of awe and hatred. They want what you have, but they're terrified of the price. They still bow to fear, call it wisdom, disguise it as responsibility. They say, "You'll understand one day," but deep down, they envy the way you walk without chains. They can't touch you because you no longer play by their rules. Fear was their language, and you stopped speaking it. And once you've lived even a single moment without fear, you can never go back. You taste something beyond survival, a wild, infinite peace. It doesn't mean life stops hurting. It means pain stops ruling you. The storms keep coming, but now you walk through them like fire through smoke, untouchable, unafraid, alive. Because once fear dies, the world's last weapon turns to dust, and all that's left is freedom staring back at you, smiling.